What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Starters are a staple of any Pokemon journey, and present you with the first of many difficult choices along the way. But recently, a video by the Hybrid Hero got me thinking, what if we had starters that were different than the norm? For the sake of argument, we'll see about replacing them with their standard types, while also adding in some extras here and there, like with Pikachu and Eevee from the Kanto region. But we'll avoid picking any from set categories like regional birds, rodents, cats, or dragons. So starting with the Kanto region itself, where there are copious amounts of lines to pick for a solid fire, water, grass core. Starting with grass, there are possibilities, but I think the most qualified would either be the Bellsprout or Oddish line, even though they hardly learn any good moves. And out of those two, I see the Oddish line as the more likely option. It can learn a couple of more moves like Drain Punch, and not to mention that it's based on the same flower as the actual starter from the region, and is also a grass poison type. For the fire type, I know that most people will likely claim Arcanine should be here, but I'm going to subvert that and go with the stunning Ninetales. Now ideally we would pick another 3-stage line, but for fire, they seem to be stuck on a 2 trend. Vulpix has the cute down pat, and Ninetales has a surprisingly large array of useful moves that could catch opponents off guard. And for the water type, again, there are a lot of options, but one that I think would serve best is the Poliwag line. These 3-stage tadpoles would level up nicely in pace with the story, and gaining the fighting typing at the end would be a nice bonus. Hey, I just noticed that all of these Pokemon evolve using a stone. That's some pretty cool connectivity between these newly appointed starters. For the extra, I'm inclined to agree with the Hybrid Hero and say that it would be Clefairy. Clefairy was supposed to be the series' mascot, but was shafted at the last minute. Plus, it's another stone evolution. But if I were to put my own spin on things, I'd probably go with a good old Cubone. Whenever I construct my own personal teams, my starter types that I always pick are Ground, along with Electric and Normal. A rather effective trio, and Cubone easily steps into that role with a respectable showing. Next for Johto, there's not really a lot of choice for Grass. We can have the Pokemon with the lowest base stat total ever, or we can go with an actual useful 3-stage line, so Hoppip it is. Certain trainers won't be as impressed with the Cottonweed Pokemon, but what it lacks in straightforward attacks, it makes up for in being a technical fighter. The added utility moves, along with the flying typing, makes it, realistically, more useful than the actual grass starter. Johto has fewer Pokemon in general, so there weren't as many of each type. So again, by process of eliminating the painfully slow blobs of molten lava, we're left with the formidable Houndoom line. One might have assumed that Dark would be an unfit type for starters, but recent generations have proven that otherwise. Plus, I'm sure that many trainers would be happy to finally get a Houndoom before they have to go and beat the Elite Four for a change. And for the water type, I don't think it's even really a question. One of the most prominent Pokemon in all of Johto is the Marrow line. These rotund aquatic creatures could be considered mascots in their own right. I kinda doubt they'd start off with Azurill, but the added fairy typing makes for an interesting arrangement between all of the starters selected. As far as an outsider pick, it's not that hard to come to Togepi. The reason Pikachu and Eevee were starters is because they were incredibly popular with a dash of narrative significance, and that's got Togepi written all over it. This little fairy even gains the flying typing, so you could use it to take you around the region and free up another slot on your team. But if we're going for a different one, I'd probably say the Snubbull line would be a fit. Unlike Johto, Hoenn has more from which to choose. My favorite would be Tropius, but that would never really work, so I think Breloom would be a nice fill-in. It's even reminiscent of the actual starter, but with the fighting typing added on. And I like Breloom just fine for being a more than respectable representative for, frankly, one of the least imposing types around. Fire, however, is a bit more constricted, because again, a single stage won't fly. So I guess we're going with Numel and Camerupt. I do like these Caliente Camels even if they're slow, but being part ground type makes them quite palatable to me, and I think the advantages far outweigh the quad weakness. And I could see the Walrein family being for water, but I would rather go with Crawdon. For one, because it's a two-stage line like the other two picks. And the Dark type adds on another level that I appreciate. Even if all the extra types don't perfectly interact, they still make for a more dynamic experience. For the additional choice, there are lots of Hoenn Pokemon that I could see, but I feel that Gardevoir would be the one that would get the best reception. I'm starting to notice a pattern in fairy types as well, but it seems to fit so well. Especially in this case with this powerful Guardian by your side. Out of the box pick, I would probably suggest Trapinch, because I would love to have a Flygon as soon as possible. Finally, an edge for not being considered a pseudo-legendary. Sinnoh. Sinnoh makes this very hard. To properly explain this, we need to skip straight to the fire type, which there are none. There's the actual starter line, which we obviously can't use, and Heatran, which we even more obviously can't use. That leaves literally one option in Magmortar. Normally, I would never pick a later evolution for this sort of thing, but we have no other options within the parameters that we've set up. So with that caveat, I feel comfortable in assigning the grass type as Roserade. Again, normally I'd pick something that's a bit more inherently native to the region, but the best I could do with that is Abomasnow, so I think Roserade is a much better fit for a starter. It's a 3-stage line and has a wide array of useful moves and methods of play to keep it feeling fresh as the day it was picked from the flower bed. That just leaves water, and I would have picked another later evolution to match the others, but surprisingly there weren't any. All we've got that's even close is Mantike. So instead we'll go with my initial reaction and pick Floatzel. Floatzel is a solid Pokemon all around, and surprisingly diverse for a pure water type. For the extra choice, I can think of no better candidate than the Luxray family. Cute little Shanks growing up all the way into a powerful Luxray almost perfectly mimics a starter line anyway, and has already been a faithful companion to many a Sinnoh trainer. And for the off-the-wall pick, I can see Baneri being a nice fit for anyone wanting a standard normal type, essentially being a two-legged Eevee. Unova can get kind of complicated, because there are actually a fair amount of grass types. Quite a few of them are actually competitive monsters in their own right. So instead of picking any one of those, I opted for the more simple but reliable Sawsbuck line. Normal grass isn't a combination I expected, but Sawsbuck pulls it off with some extra coverage to boot. For fire, I was trying to think of what might be best, but then Chandelure came to mind, and that was that. This 3-stage line is one that's generally approved of, even though they're some of the household object crowd. Plus it creates a nice dichotomy with the normal type starter that we just appointed as well. And I hate to do this to poor Sawsbuck, but I believe the best choice is another 3-stage line with Seismitoad. Again, having an extra type, in this case ground, would make it more interesting. I mean, we saw how well that went with Swampert, right? I think these three together actually work very well, and might even be a more difficult choice than the actual starters from Unova. As for the other one, I find Minccino to be an exemplary stand-in. It's just like a Pikachu, but without the electricity. I'm actually using one in a Black 2 playthrough right now, and it's doing better than one might expect. And as for the final ones, it's even more bizarre because I'm dredging up that old theory that the elemental monkeys were maybe supposed to be starters at some point in development. They're a little lackluster perhaps, but they would get the job done. So maybe there's a universe out there in which Professor Juniper might give out these monkeys to new trainers. In Kelos there are precious few options with less than 100 new Pokemon, but luckily they gave us just enough to have everything we need. For grass, the only one that isn't dead is Go-Goat, but I think it works perfectly in the role. It's surprisingly bulky, with lots of moves that most other starters would kill for. For fire, since Talonflame is out of commission, we have the Litleo and Pyroar family. These proud lions are also normal types, and are able to use powerful special moves with ease. I was tempted to make the water type Barbaracle, but I think more people would appreciate the Clauncher line instead. Even as a solo water type, it can get some nice coverage moves to work in tandem with its ability Mega Launcher. Plus, I really like how this group of 2-stagers came out. It seems very even to me. For the outside pick, again, not many, but I'm going with Helioptile. It's the electric pick and the normal pick all in one, like some kind of weird Eevee-Chew hybrid. Plus it uses stone evolutions too, so you could always choose when or if you want to evolve it. Outside pick, out of the limited pool, I think again, surprise surprise, it's another fairy type with the Florges line. These floral guardians are integral to the Kalos region, as evidenced by the story, and you can even pick out your favorite color. And finally, we have Alola, which also left us scraping by with the starter types, but I think a little Bounce Sweep goes a long way. Tsarina is not only strong with a great ability, but also looks fabulous while doing it. And outside of a Turtonator and a fourth of an Oricorio, we don't really have any other fire options but Salandit and Salazzle, which is fine by me because I love them. But they would absolutely have to rig it so that it would always be female, because not letting it evolve would just be cruel. And while we do have a bit more options in the water type, they really are either weird one-offs or don't have the disposition to be a starter. So that just leaves Dewpider and Araquanid. Being the first ever bug-type starter would be quite the feat, but it also makes this trio a rather unique set of potential starters with their own pitfalls to watch out for. For the extra pick, I knew immediately that Rockruff would be the only choice. This dog is loyal, a competent battler, and also a fan favorite. Not to mention that it has the potential for 3 different evolutions. Other than that, the only other eligible Alola Pokemon that didn't already fall into another category seemed to be Mimikyu. It might not fit quite as well since it doesn't evolve at all, but this Pokemon has a way of transcending what is expected of it. So I could see many people being just fine picking up this small terror from the start. So, those are my choices for hypothetically replacing the starters of each region. This was quite a fun and interesting thought exercise. What Pokemon would you be willing to promote to starters? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!